Okay. Please, let's be seated. Thank you very much. I don't know why. But the time is also running. The time is running. Let's do something. Let's do something. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Now the program is taking off. I believe we've had enough time to settle. As you're all aware, today is a big day for road safety. Ghana, in particular, is very proud to host you. And I know that when it comes to road safety, there are certain countries in Africa, whenever we are writing the success story, these countries, the names will not be missing. Ghana in particular, and our good friend from Nigeria. I see the Corps Marshal of Federal Road Safety Commission Nigeria here. You're welcome. Boboye, you're welcome. Today is Road Safety Award, Kofi Annan Road Safety Award. The whole lineup of activities this morning and in the afternoon. The morning is opening session, followed by technical discussions that will take us up to 12:10 from the program. Unfortunately, there have been a few delays, and we apologize for that. But I can assure you that if you look at the personalities that we are assembling today, we are all going to take back home a lot of experience in road safety management, something that can motivate all of us to go and do more to save our people in Africa. We will start the program with an opening prayer. And here, I will ask one of us to volunteer and put us in the hands of the Almighty God. If you are touched by the Spirit of God this morning, please be up here with me on the podium. Stretch your hands on us so that the Almighty God will make this program a successful one. Any of you who is touched by the Spirit of God, please. Someone not touched by the Spirit of God? Okay. So please come. Yes, you can give it to her. Yeah. You can be there. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Because time is far gone, I will, on behalf of the National Road Safety Authority Ghana, the Ministry of Transport, and Ghana in general, welcome all of you. Now, this opening session is going to be in the hands of a moderator. So my work is to transfer you straight away to the moderator to continue from here. And she will run us through the opening session and also through the technical session. But we have certain personalities here that, first of all, we need to recognize their presence to come and grace the occasion with us. I will mention Mr. Jan Todd, UN Secretary General Special Envoy for Road Safety. Please, let's give him a round of applause. We have Ms. Vera Songwe, Executive Secretary, UN Economic Commission for Africa, ECA. I am told she's undergoing some COVID test and is delaying a bit. So we pray that she goes through very successfully and join us in a couple of minutes from now. But our own father, Honorable Mr. Kwaku Ofori Esiama, Minister of Transport, Government of Ghana, has dedicated his presence here to the Deputy Minister, Honorable Hassan Tampuli, Deputy Minister for Transport and Member of Parliament for Gushegu constituency in the Northern Region. At this juncture, I will hand over very solemnly to Our Lady, Engineer Mrs. May Obri Yeboah, former Executive Director, National Road Safety Authority, Ghana. This lady, when it comes to road safety, I think she needs no introduction. Somehow, unfortunately, we are using the word former. And she's here to steer affairs through the opening down to the technical sessions. Madam has been at the forefront of road safety for more than 10 years. She's an engineer by profession, worked with Department of Urban Roads as an engineer, continued and led the National Road Safety Authority first as a director, the then National Road Safety Commission, and then as the Director General of the authority until January this year that she had to go on retirement. Somebody was asking me if she's really 60. She doesn't appear, she doesn't look like a 60. Ladies and gentlemen, Engineer, Mrs. May Obri Yeboah for you. Thank you.
Thank you, David. You're all welcome to Ghana. And like we said at the beginning, this is a hybrid webinar. We have participants that are virtual and also those of us who are here in person. And so I also would want to welcome all of you to Ghana for this wonderful webinar today. For the first part, which is the opening for this webinar, which has the theme, Safer and Cleaner Vehicles in Africa, Challenges and Opportunities in the Second UN Decade of Action for Road Safety, 2021 to 2030. Like David said, we have some distinguished guests for us who are going to do the opening. So without wasting more time, we would invite the UN Secretary General Special Envoy for Road Safety in the person of Mr. Gentle to do his remark. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Your Excellencies, Honorary Hassan Tampuri, my dear friend Vera Songwe, the United Nations Under Secretary General and Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa, Excellencies, colleagues, and friends. I'm honored today as a special envoy for road safety to the Secretary General to join my colleagues to open this webinar on safer and cleaner vehicles in Africa in the context of the Kofi Annan Road Safety Award. I'm pleased to honor the legacy of Kofi Annan, who called for more investment for road safety and advocated, starting in the early 2000s, for a systematic change to build a world where roads are safe for every road users and everywhere. Today, we are celebrating all those comparable initiatives and progress that is being made on the continent. I hope you will join us later for the ceremony of the first ever Kofi Annan Road Safety Award for Africa. The collective effort to secure safe and cleaner vehicles in Africa is certainly one that needs to be recognized. If we want to reach the targets of the new decade of action for road safety to halve road victims and provide access to safe, affordable, and sustainable transport to all by 2030, we need to urgently address the unique road safety challenges in Africa. If road traffic crashes kill 1.3 million people each year, Africa faces the highest per capita rate of road crashes fatalities, with 246,000 deaths occurring annually. This is a number projected to more than double by 2030 if no action is taken. Car occupants making up to 29% of all deaths. Out of the more than 45 million vehicles in operations in Africa, around 90% are imported used vehicles. A large share of the currently imported used vehicles are not of a good quality, unfortunately. They are very old cars, an average of 18-year-old. This means that safety is not the only concern. The used cars in Africa also are a hazard to the environment. Most do not meet the recommended minimum emission standard Euro 4. Globally, vehicles are responsible for 25% of energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, quality assurance of the used car market can also contribute to mitigate climate change. Not to mention that a minimum set of safety features for all used and new vehicles can lead to a 30% reduction in mortality and morbidity. Putting in place requirements to ensure that only quality vehicles are received and accepted will help to save the life of car drivers, passengers, and other road users. There is a shared responsibility between importers, exporters, and manufacturers. While African countries are introducing standards, exporters and vehicle manufacturers should also stop sending poor vehicles to Africa. Major used exporting markets should consider introducing minimum export standards. If it is not acceptable in a developed country, don't send it to a developing country. This is true for both unused new vehicles. Car manufacturers should commit to only building cars that meet the minimum set of safety standards, regardless of where in the world they are sold. In summary, here is the basic considerations. One, used vehicle should have a valid roadworthiness certificate at the time of the export. Two, if a vehicle is not roadworthy in a developed country, it should not be exported to a developing countries. Three, they should meet vehicle emission standard Euro 4 and should not be older than 8 years. 4, used and new vehicles should meet minimum safety requirements as outlined in the international regulatory frameworks and the UN global technical regulations. These parameters that will result in massive health and road safety benefits, and it will make a huge contribution to addressing global climate change. It is this type of systematic and structural changes that will truly contribute to the vision of Kofi Annan for no one to be left behind. I'm confident that if we all work together and pull through in our respective areas, it will lead to thousands of lives saved in Africa in the years ahead. And that's what we all want here today. And I thank you for being here and for your commitment and for assisting to a memorable day, the Kofi Annan Award. Thank you.
Another round of applause. Your Excellency, thank you. You couldn't have said it better. Quality assurance for vehicles that are coming to Africa. I think there's so much to be learned from what you have just told us. And we hope that by the end of this webinar, Africa will take a stand on this issue about used vehicles coming down from the Europe, etc., so that we will be safe on our continent. Thank you so much. Now, the next speaker, as I've been introduced, is the Deputy Minister for Transport in the person of Hassan Tampuri. Sir, you are most welcome, Honorable.
I read this statement on behalf of the Honorable Minister for Transport, who unfortunately could not join us, but hopefully he will be with us for the afternoon session. The United Nations Secretary General Special Envoy for Road Safety, the Jean Todd, the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA, Dr. Vera Songwe, the Executive Secretary of the Kofi Annan Foundation, representative of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, the Country Director, World Bank, representatives of Honorable Ministers of Transport for our sister countries, the Chairman, Parliamentary Select Committee on Roads and Transport, the Ranking Member, Parliamentary Select Committee on Roads and Transport. I just noticed them walking to the hall. Officials from ministries, departments, and agencies, development partners, members of the media, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. I am happy to join you this morning at this very important hybrid event on safer and cleaner vehicles for Africa under the theme Challenges and Opportunities in the second UN Decade for Action for Road Safety, 2021 to 2030. On behalf of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and the collaborating partners, I welcome you all to this august gathering, including our virtual participants. My interest in this seminar comes from the fact that road transport continues to dominate the mobility systems on the African continent. It is therefore incumbent on us as policymakers and implementers to ensure that the provision of transport services are carried out to our benefit and not to our disadvantage. Ladies and gentlemen, the experts have said that Africa will experience the biggest rise in the number of cars in the upcoming years, and at least for now, most of them will come from the import of used vehicles. In Ghana, over 80% of imported vehicles are used ones, and here we call them second-hand. And I believe this is not so different from other African countries. Most of our imports come mainly from the European Union the United States of America, the Asian market, and the Middle East with varying export regulations. It is therefore important that we put in appropriate safeguards to prevent the import of not fit for purpose vehicles. We must focus our attention on establishing a common agenda to standardize and harmonize vehicle imports, regulations, and standardization in order to protect our markets from dumping of scraps or vehicles not fit for purpose. Similarly, the poor quality of fuels must be improved to support the introduction of cleaner vehicles. Apart from the Eastern African countries, which have adopted low sulfur fuels of 10 ppm to 50 ppm, very few countries in the rest of Africa use low sulfur fuels. For instance, in the whole of West Africa, it's only Ghana that uses fuel with 50 ppm and below. Mention can also be made of Morocco in North Africa and South Africa in the Southern African enclave. Those are the countries that use low sulfur fuels. Some use as high as 10,000 ppm, 5,000 ppm, 3,000 ppm of sulfur. It's important that we harmonize this as well as a region. We need to work towards a common agenda on standardization in order to protect our domestic markets. The multidimensional nature of used vehicle markets makes it very complex for achieving results without collaboration and support, especially from the exporting countries. And needless to say, Michel Jean Todt has hit the nail right on the head. From exporting countries and the international community. Instead of exporting the problem to other parts of the world, it will be beneficial to enhance capacities to improve the quality of used vehicles before exports. If it is not fit for purpose in Europe, in America, in the Middle East, or in Asia, then it is not fit for purpose also in Africa. That should be the spirit in which we should look at this. I believe this seminar will delve deeper into the issues and come out with workable proposals for considerations. Ladies and gentlemen, though the majority of African countries still have very low levels of motorization compared to countries in the developed world, road fatalities in Africa is one of the highest, with the death rates of about 27 persons to 10,000 population compared to world average of 18 deaths per 100,000 population. The multi-sectorial nature of road safety management makes it very complex for achieving results without collaboration from all stakeholders. It is therefore important that we collaborate and work towards harmonizing our efforts to reduce fatalities on the continent's roads. The United Nations' second decade of action for road safety offers us a unique opportunity to harness our experiences and capacities to substantially reduce fatalities on our roads. I believe we will all take advantage of the opportunities that abound in the second decade of action to drive developments in our respective countries. Distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I wish to emphasize that government is committed to the promotion of cleaner and safer vehicles, but require the support and expertise of all players. Clean development initiatives that safeguard the environment and protect human health should be the ultimate aim. Let's work together in the promotion of an efficient and environmentally friendly transport system for the benefit of the African continent. I thank you all for your attention.
Honorable Deputy Minister, we want to thank you for the speech that was read on behalf of the Honorable Minister. I think he said it all. For us in Ghana, at more than 80% of imported vehicles are second-hand, or what we call second-hand, or used vehicles coming from outside. And he stressed the need for standardization of imported vehicles. What even iced the cake was that he said, if it's not fit for purpose in Europe and other places, Definitely, it is not fit for purpose in Africa. Let's give him a hand of applause. Thank you so much. At the moment, I told you at the beginning, it's a hybrid webinar. So far, we have about 75 people online. So we, in addition to those of us here, I'll go to the third speaker. David told us she was having some challenges, but we thank God she's here. She is in the person of Her Excellency Dr. Vera Songwe, the UN Under Secretary General and the Executive Secretary for UN Economic Commission for Africa. Madam, you are most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I was a little bit late. I was taking my COVID test, which is a sign of the times these days. UN Secretary General, Special Envoy for Road Safety, and my good friend, Mr. Jean Third, the Deputy Minister of Transport for the Government of Ghana, Mr. Hassan Tampoli, good to see you again. Good morning. Colleagues from the World Bank, the United Nations, the private sector, and civil society. Good morning. I think it is an honor and a pleasure for the Economic Commission for Africa and the UN at large to be here with you. I think when we talk about road safety, it is clear that the United Nations and most of all, our head, the Secretary General, takes road safety quite seriously. Otherwise, we would not have had an undying and non-fatiguing special envoy in the name of Jean Third, who has been traveling the continent to talk about this issue. A few years ago, I thought to myself, why do we care about road safety? And we do care because in some countries, 5 to 15% of our gross domestic product is spent because our roads are not safe. So we are taking care of sick people. Families are left with injured people for a very long time, as Jean spoke about. So really, talking today about safer and cleaner vehicles in Africa, it really is, I think, what we should also be doing, because as we all know, there is another crisis that has hit the continent. And in the midst of that crisis, to those challenges, we cannot add road safety. And, you know, we seem to be on the continent repeating sometimes the same issues. We all talk about vaccines and the cost of vaccine disposal. We've all seen so many African countries try to dispose of used vaccines or expired vaccines and how difficult that is. I think here today we're talking about how we dispose of used cars and wondering why again on our continent we get, as the minister said and as Jean said, goods that are not good for others. Why do we need to bring them to our continent to suffer the cost of disposing of them? I think this is a pervasive problem and we must stop it, whether it's in vaccines, whether it's on cars, or whether it's on counterfeit drugs. We kind of seem to see this problem repeating itself on the continent. And each time it happens, it costs lives and it costs resources that Africa can ill afford. Used vehicles, I wouldn't repeat the numbers, contribute to a huge, huge part of Africa's fleet. For instance, relatively inexpensive used cars from Asia, 95% of Angola's fleet is made up of used cars. 85% of Ethiopia's fleet is made up of used cars. The average age of that fleet in Ethiopia is almost 20 years. In Zimbabwe, it has increased from 800,000 in 2010 to 1.5 million today. And each one of these used cars is a potential accident. And so essentially, yes, it is important for us to talk about road safety, but we must start trying to solve the problem from the origin or the root causes. And we know that it is vehicles that are not fit for the road, that are not fit for purpose. And we must try to see how we can work on that. And so this conversation today, I think one is about raising the advocacy, making sure that our leaders know that it's not only that we import used cars, is that those used cars are killing our people. And if they're not killing our people, they're becoming a burden to our health systems. But also, we always talk about the people that pass away. We rarely talk about those who get injured for life and who become then a social cost to societies, but also to their families. And I think that is an even more important long-term cost that we must acknowledge and work against. What can we do? Maybe together, and I think I see my colleagues from the Economic Commission for Africa and a few people from the African Union. Maybe the first thing we should do is get the African Union in June as a concrete actionable item, and maybe we'll get the president today to commit to that. So in June, let the African Union pass a resolution that says we no longer should import used cars that have not been tested and gone through vehicle inspection in the countries of origin where they're coming from. I think this is something that we can clearly do. And Robert, maybe, and Jean, maybe let's commit to getting the president today to carry that on, and in the session in June, to see whether we can actually adopt something that says the African Union and our heads of states collectively are taking this on as part of the conversations. We just came from the EU-AU summit. Maybe this should have been something that we should have spoken about there, but I think we can catch up and make sure that it is a legacy of this summit. I'm sure that Kofi Annan and the Kofi Annan Foundation that are with us today will help us fight that fight and have something concrete out of these conversations that we will be having today. Once we have done that, for the cars that make it onto the continent, we still need to ensure that we can enforce harmonized standards across the continent. That maybe as we pass this resolution on imports of used cars, let's have it as a bandwagon resolution. African Union and ECA that are here today, harmonized standards across Africa, enforcement of the standards. I think there's already a couple of countries that are doing well, and we can commit to ensuring that we take other countries to visit the countries that are doing well by way of road safety inspections. I think Nigeria has done quite an amazing job, and the minister was with us this morning and will be with us this afternoon in terms of enforcing road safety and getting the right standards. The COMESA, EAC, and the SADC countries have also adopted standard design specifications on vehicle testing. So we already do have an embryo of that can work quite well. And so we hope that we can get that done as well. But I think if we can, in your deliberations today, agree on if our leaders were to pass something in June around the importation of used cars, what should that look like? How many years? What kinds of standards? Something that's specific that will allow us then to be able to give it to the head of state this afternoon and maybe see whether we can have it adopted by June. Then we would have said that we had a morning well spent together discussing this issue, again, in honor of who was once the head of the United Nations, whom we pay an enormous tribute and respect, a father to your nation, again, for whom we pay enormous tribute and respect. And I think we owe it to him, not just to come here today to talk, but to actually do about a cause that was very dear to his heart. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. You have set the tone for this afternoon's webinar sessions, the technical sessions. And one thing she said was the average age of vehicles that we see on our continent is about 20 years. I think during the technical session, we hear a lot about some of these things, and you have the opportunity to ask questions. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Now we have some dignitaries with us, and I would indulge your permission to introduce the Honorable Kennedy Osei Nyakon, the MP for Akim Stradro and Chair of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Roads and Transport. Honorable, thank you for coming. We have with him also Honorable Governor Kwame Agoja. He is the MP for Adaklu and ranking member for Roads and Transport Committee. Honorable, you are most welcome. We also have Honorable Frederick Adam Obeng. He is also the Deputy Minister. There are two of them, so he's the second one. Deputy Minister for Transport and MP for Upper West Akin. Honorable, you are most welcome. We cannot do or have a road safety program in Ghana without involving the National Road Safety Authority. And so we have in our midst the board chairman for the National Road Safety Authority. He is in the person of Jermaine Nkrumah. Sir, you are most welcome. And so this is the end of the first part, and that is the opening. We will continue straight into the rest, that's the technical section. But I'm sure our guests may want to leave, but we would appreciate it if you are part of these sections. And so we will not have any formal day going. As they go, we will start to we will continue with our session. But a few announcements. Please, you know, as we said at the beginning, this is this webinar is proud to the Road Safety Awards. And I want to say that all of you who have been invited for the opening session have also been invited for the awards. And it's at 3 p.m. today. I just want to inform you that His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, will be here in person. So you're most welcome. Also, the refreshment is at the back. We will not break, but you can walk and have some refreshment. And also, we have a photo stage outside. If you want to take a picture, a stage has been set for you. So you can go there and also have some pictures taken. Thank you. So on behalf of us, we want to thank you for coming. And like I said, we wouldn't mind if you have a seat so that we can continue with the session. Yeah, Moses. Thank you very much. We'll continue with our program. And this one, we are delving into the technical section. The first part of this technical session has to do with safer vehicles in Africa. And we are expecting 4 panelists. However, 2 are here in person and 2 will join us virtually. So I would be introducing the panelists. And like I said, each of them have some number of minutes. We would appreciate it if you go, you know how many minutes. Even now we are far behind. So please make sure you are within the time. So the first presentation is on Africa's post-2021 strategic direction for road safety. And we have in person Mr. Placide Badji, who is an economic affairs officer of the UNECA. He is taking the first presentation. Placide. Yeah, here. Thank you. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you. My name is, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, distinguished participants. My name is Placide Badji. I'm Economic Affairs Officer within the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. I'm going to present the strategic direction for the post-2020 decade. The objective of the presentation is to give you an overview on those strategic directions. This is the outline, and I plan to present to you the context, the principle of the strategic directions, and the content, and by presenting you the cross-cutting and emerging issues let's jump in the contest. In 2019, we were running to the end of the first decade of road safety, and we could see that Africa was not performing well, and Africa is behind in terms of road safety compared to the other regions. From there, African ministers recommend the African Union Commission with the support of the UNRSF to produce strategic directions for the new decade of road safety. That has been done, and we did the first Africa Road Safety Conference at the end of 2019 to adopt those strategic to proceed with the technical validation of those strategic directions. And let's go to the principle. The strategic direction are evidence-based because we took into account the outcomes of the assessment of the Africa Road Safety Action Plan for the decade 2011-2020. And it is also comprehensive because it covers all the areas of road safety. Finally, it is focused on areas where most African countries had challenged to implement activities during the decade. Finally, we took into account 3 initiatives and documents as well. Those are first the SDGs and United Nations Road Safety Targets. But we took also into account the outcomes of the report of the African Europe Task Force on connectivity and road safety. Finally, we took into account the recommendations of the academic expert group of UN. The content of the strategic directions. First, one big project of the strategic directions is that during the new decade, the African Road Safety Observatory should be fully operationalized. There is also the question of the advocacy at the highest level of the continental agenda of road safety, and there is the question of knowledge producing and sharing as well by establishing regional center of excellence for road safety. During the first decade, we didn't took into account the inclusion of private sector. Then one of the project of the strategic directions is to create a community where members can share their expertise and actions, and private sector and also NGOs, associations have something very important to do in. Finally, we are going to talk about cross-cutting and emerging issues. The first one is the digitalization of road safety in Africa. You know, there are some many benefits for digitalization in road safety, whether we are talking about data or safer cars, roads, and others. So that is one of the emerging issues that has been raised by the strategic directions. Another aspect is how we are going to link SDGs with road safety in all the areas. There is also that question of the responsibility of insurance companies in road safety, and finally, how we are going to link, how we are going to implement the safe system approach in the agenda of road safety all around the continent. Then I will end by that. I think we will continue by presenting the action plan of the decade that comes from those strategic direction for the new decade. Thank you.
Thank you, Placide. Like I said at the beginning, time is of essence. So as soon as you see me walking here, then your time is almost up. Please, let's respect the time. Thank you so much. There's a lot to discuss. We'll have a session for discussion. So the second person who is doing the presentation is on African Road Safety Action Plan 2021 to 2030, a focus on safety vehicles. He's in the person of Mr. Robert Lesenge, Chief Energy Infrastructure and Services Section of the UNECA. Sir, you have 7 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, moderator. I will try to use not more than 7 minutes. So here's my outline. First, I will look at ECS engagement and perspectives on used vehicles. Then I will look at the current situation of used vehicles in Africa very briefly. Third, I would want to look at the implications of the African Continental Free Trade Area for used vehicles on our continent. And then I will focus on the activities in our new action plan that deal with used vehicles. And I will conclude with some ongoing efforts that we see in African countries. Now, ECS engagement. For us, the growing number of used vehicles in Africa poses a road safety and environmental challenge. So 2 aspects, not only road safety, but a challenge to our environment. And that's why ECA has focused its attention over the years on this issue of used vehicle. First, it's a component of all the road safety performance reviews that we do in African countries. So far, we have done reviews in about 4 countries. We make sure that the issue of used vehicles is addressed through the various decades of actions that we have had in Africa. As you know, 2011, 2020 was the first decade, and we just started the second decade, 2021 to 2030. We also make sure that the strategic direction that my colleague Placide just mentioned adequately dealt with the issue of used vehicles. And to show our commitment to this issue, we make sure that the seminar that we're having now that leads to the Kofi Annan Award is on this very issue of used vehicles. Now, some statistics, and my executive secretary mentioned some of them. In Cameroon, vehicle fleet increased from 201,000 in 2010 to 675,000 in 2014. It more than tripled, and most of this was used vehicles. In Uganda, 95% of the fleet consists of used vehicles. Ethiopia, 85%. Again, the executive secretary mentioned the average age of more than 20 years. In Zimbabwe, we also see this trend of used vehicles. So it's a problem that cuts across the continent. Now, one of the things that we have tried to do is to look at the environmental dimension of these vehicles. So we look at how the age of vehicles, how the distance traveled by vehicle, and these are important parameters of used vehicles. How do they contribute to pollution in our cities? And we did this research in Ethiopia. And if you can see the chart, you will see that older, smaller vehicles polluted by far more than newer and larger vehicles. And this has implications for mobility, urban mass transit. So it's to discourage the use of more smaller minibuses that are very old and to encourage newer, large vehicles. Our research also on the implications of old vehicles on the environment focus on the distance traveled. And you would agree with me that most of the vehicles that come from Europe have covered a lot of mileage. And the evidence we found here in Ethiopia is the more distance that vehicles have covered, the more they pollute the environment. I think that is not strange, but that is confirmation. Now, I did mention the African Continental Free Trade Area that is going to have implications for road safety and used vehicles. Our study found that if we implement the African Continental Free Trade Area between now and 2030, we are going to have more than 2 million additional trucks in Africa. And you would agree with me that most of these 2 million trucks would be used vehicles. And so if we are not regulating used vehicles, we are going to find ourselves in a situation where between now and 2030, we're going to have a lot more used vehicles that will be dumped into our continent. Now, African Road Safety Action Plan, what specific measures are we proposing in regard to used vehicles? One, we are calling on African countries to introduce incentives for importation of used vehicles, and you will see some incentives that some countries are already taking. Second, we are saying vehicle standards and safety ratings must be imposed for new and used vehicles. I think it's not only used vehicles that are dangerous. We found out that some new so-called vehicles that come to Africa are actually below the standards of those same vehicles in Europe and in America, and we don't want to see that. We're also talking about establishing a reliable system for regular technical controls and inspections of vehicles. In some countries, it's not even mandatory to have regular inspection of vehicles. That cannot be correct. We're also saying that vehicles that are produced for every market should be equipped with recommended levels of safety performance. Those measures that you see in blue, I'm not going to touch them. They're coming from a global action plan. The reason I will not touch them is because my colleague Nan of WHO is going to have a presentation on the global activities. And I'm coming towards the end of my presentation. Here, I'm just showing what we find out in our research in Africa, that vehicle inspection stations exist in many African countries, but the rural areas are still lagging behind. You don't find them there. The frequency of inspection of vehicles varies for private and public vehicles, which is quite normal. And I can see that the moderator will be coming towards me very, very, very soon. But I think the practice where countries are encouraging the private sector to be involved in vehicle inspection is very good, because they can profit from their investment, but they are also contributing to safety. So let me just end with some of the measures that we see in African countries. Age limits are being imposed in Senegal, 5 years for cars, 8 years for trucks. In DRC, 10 years for vehicles imported. There are also tax policies. In countries like Ethiopia, you have taxes that are lower for newer than higher vehicles. But I think, let me leave it there. There's a lot we could discuss on this topic. 7 minutes, certainly, moderator. It's not enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I'm sure during the discussion, some of the things will come up and you have the opportunity to respond. Thank you so much, Robert. Now, the next person is Mr. Han Tran. He's the Head Safety and Mobility Social Determinants of Health, WHO. He will join us virtually, and his topic is UN Global Action Plan for decade 2021 to 2020, a focus on safer vehicles. So we expect Mr. Tran to join us virtually. Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderator, excellencies and distinguished colleagues. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you, although virtually, to talk a bit about the global plan for the Decade of Action for Road Safety 2021 to 2030. I hope at this point that you are all able to see my screen. It seems to be moving by itself. So let me go ahead and jump right into this. The plan, as many of you know, was actually as a result, the result of a General Assembly resolution that was adopted on the 31st of October, August in 2020. And the resolution actually called for the Decade of Action for 2021 to 2030. It established, it renewed a commitment to the reduction of deaths by 50% by 2030. And it also requested WHO, along with the UN Regional Economic Commissions, to develop a plan of action to support and guide member states in achieving the 50% target. This has been a truly consultative process, and the slide here is just meant to show you that we had many phases in which we solicited input from technical experts, as was mentioned by Plessis, but also from member states themselves. And so we had a number of consultations, and based on those, we really refined the plan to make sure that the plan was both technically sound, inspirational, but also feasible and applicable to all countries. I want to say that the plan calls for a 50% reduction, and obviously we've heard this number over and over again. But one of the things that we highlighted in the plan is that the 50% reduction is in fact possible, and that action is possible irrespective of the country settings. And obviously the safety of vehicles plays a major part in that. But I also just wanted to take this opportunity to say that, in fact, if you break down the 50% over the course of 10 years, changes as little as a 7% reduction in the number of road traffic deaths annually over the course of 10 years will actually amount to a 50% reduction. So if 50% is too much or too overwhelming, we just have to think about it in smaller bite sizes. And if we think 7%, I think that's much more approachable over the course of the next 10 years. As has been already highlighted by the number of the colleagues, the plan really builds up on key principles of the safe systems. And I wanted to just highlight a couple of them. Obviously, the idea is that systems need to be forgiving of human errors, but I also wanted to highlight the importance of systems that are equitable and responsive to the needs of a range of users in the population. And while we recognize in the African context that cars are an important mode of transport, we also need to ensure the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists as well. And as has been highlighted by the speakers ahead of me, we recognize that road safety is a shared responsibility, and then there's a need to really engage with a wide range of actors. And finally, I just wanted to make the point that mobility and transport are not static, and that mobility and transport are constantly evolving. And as we think over the next decade, we also have to anticipate, respond not just to the problems of today, but also anticipate the problems of tomorrow and plan on responding to those as well. The plans, as many of you have seen, has 5 basic elements. It has a vision, it has a set of recommended actions, it talks a bit about implementation requirements, it highlights the responsibility of a number of actors, and then it also ends with a section on monitoring and evaluation. So, what are the key areas of the plan? I'm sorry, I think I'm having some technical issues. As you can see here, there are 5 sort of key groups of recommendations, and I won't go into all of them. I just wanted to highlight that obviously safe vehicles is a major part of this. And we also recognize that in addition to the regulations for safety standards, there's also an important role for things such as vehicle registration and inspections, also for routine checks for vehicle safety. So in order for those regulations, safety regulations to actually work at the country level, there needs to be mechanisms in the country on the ground to ensure that there is an opportunity for testing and registration of vehicles that we do know. The other point that I want to highlight is the importance of multimodal. I'm not sure why my slides are going. Multimodal transport and land use planning. And the point that I want to make here is that while, as I said before, while we recognize that the safe vehicles are important, we also actually want to reduce the reliance upon used vehicles to begin with. And therefore, as we're thinking about safety and mobility moving forward the next decade, we want to encourage the development and investments in public transport infrastructure, that allows for safe cycling and safe walking. And those are all critical elements of the new plan. Next slide. Okay. So in terms of the implementation requirements, again, I've highlighted here the 7 key points that have been raised in the global plan. I wanted to just mention that a number of these actually relate directly to vehicle safety and vehicle standards, including, for example, issues related to speed management and the use of technologies such as intelligent speed control, which are very critical in actually helping to not only improve the safety of vehicles in the event of a crash, but also help to prevent crashes from occurring to begin with. In terms of the shared responsibility for road safety, I wanted to just, you can see here, obviously we highlight a range of actors from government, civil society, private sector, funders, as well as the United Nations family. And in terms of a couple of points that I wanted to emphasize, obviously when we think about the private sector, we know that the industry themselves have an important role to play in ensuring that vehicles are safe. But we also recognize, for example, especially when we're dealing with used vehicles, that the role of independent organizations that test and vehicles for safety and that use those results to generate consumer demand for safety is also a very important role. And here, civil society, academia can play a very important role in ensuring that there is consumer interest and consumer demand in actual having safe vehicles. And I think that's an important part of the equation. So on the one hand, we actually need governments to set regulations. We need governments to adopt regulations to ensure that unsafe vehicles are not being imported into the African context. We also need to make sure that there are testing and registration of vehicles to ensure that once they do get into the continent, that they are, we can certify that they are safe. And of course, we need continual advocacy on the part of independent organizations that do test for the safety of vehicles and to generate consumer demand and interest for safe vehicles in the continent. So I think this is really my last slide. And I just wanted to close by saying that we really do believe, as I said at the start of this, when we were developing this plan, that the 50% reduction in the number of deaths and injuries is feasible. As I said, if we think about it as a 7% reduction over the course of the next 10 years, I think it is very much achievable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are most grateful. I think the message has been well assimilated, and when it gets to the questions or discussion, you have some time to also respond. Thank you. The next is a presentation by Mr. Walter Nestle, the UN Vehicle Regulations. Mr. Nestle is the Chief of Vehicles Regulations Section, Sustainable Transport Division of the ECE. Please, can you take the floor now? You have 7 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you for the introduction and warm welcome to Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation to speak at this webinar and safer and cleaner vehicles in Africa, and to provide you a brief introduction on UN vehicle regulations. Next slide, thank you. First, let me introduce to you the World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations, WP29, the UN body dealing with UN vehicle regulations. WP29 was historically established within the Inland Transport Committee at UNECE some 70 years ago. It is the unique worldwide regulatory forum for the automotive sector, and its members come from all continents, as any country being a member of the United Nations may participate. WP29 administers 3 multilateral UN agreements, 2 of them dealing with requirements for new vehicles, and 1 with technical inspections of vehicles in use. Contracting parties to these agreements are indicated on the map. However, many more countries apply UN vehicle regulations unilaterally. WP29's work is clustered into 6 areas, which are subject to work of its 6 subsidiary working parties, and they cover general safety, active safety, passive safety, emissions of noise and emission of pollutants, light and light signaling, and also forward-looking, automated, autonomous, and connected vehicles. Individual subjects are dealt with by some 40 so-called informal working groups, and overall we have a global network of 4,000 experts that contribute to the establishment of UN regulations. Next slide, please. Now let me introduce the 3 agreements dealing with the international regulatory framework for vehicle regulations. The 2 agreements for vehicles when they are new are the 1958 agreement on UN regulations and the 1998 agreement on UN global technical regulations. In total, we have then for vehicles in use, the 1997 agreement on periodic technical inspections of vehicles. In total, we have some 200 international vehicle regulations and also a few resolutions. They are ready to use, off the shelf. They are available free of charge. So there is no need to reinvent the wheel. Let's have a look on these 3 agreements. Can you stay at the previous slide, please? Thank you. All these 3 agreements are kind of framework legislation dealing with the establishment and amendment of regulations, also provide information on accession and applications to these agreements and their regulations, and also have parts on the rights and duties of contracting parties. The basic principle of all these UN regulations is that they are performance-oriented and not design restrictive. So their main content are performance requirements and test procedures. Under the 1958 agreement, we have additional elements such as conformity of production requirements, marking requirements. You may find in your car on several parts a capital letter E in a circle. This is showing that this part has been approved according to a UN regulation. We also have requirements for information sharing between contracting parties, and very important, the reciprocal recognition of approvals among contracting parties. The 1998 agreement is designed to support self-certification regimes as we know it in the United States and Canada. Their technical content is equal to that of the regulations under the 58 agreement. It's also called parallel agreement. However, no administrative requirements are covered in the 1998 agreement. The 97 agreement is dealing with periodic technical inspection. There we have annexed 4 rules on different elements, and these rules contain requirements on the test frequency, test items, test methods. It lists the main defects for these test items, and also provides an assessment of the defects according to their risk in different classes: minor, major, and dangerous defects. The agreement also establishes a test certificate, and it establishes the reciprocal recognition for the trans-border traffic with such vehicles. Next slide, please. Now, let's ask the question, why are these regulations needed? So if you look on vehicles, on new vehicles, industry sticks to the approach to only deliver safety and environment protection features that are required at national level. This leads to a situation that from the outside appearance, vehicles fulfilling highest standards do not differ from those unsafe and high polluting ones that are delivered to low and middle income countries that do not have a regulatory framework in place. And as you can see on the two images of crash tests, it becomes clear which version is the safe one. So in the below version, it is much likely that you will not survive.
Please, your time is up now. We want to
If you, yeah, vehicle safety is important. If I may have 2 minutes, I will briefly run through the remaining slides. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please, a round of applause for Mr. Walter. We will have one more presentation before we have the discussion. The next presentation is by Mr. Charles Abani, Resident Coordinator, UN Coordinator of Ghana. He is going to speak on Ghana's nationally determined contribution, NDC, in the context of climate change and road safety, nexus between vehicle emissions and road safety. Mr. Charles Abani. The time is really short, but let's manage it.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody. And my apologies, I was not here at the opening due to conflicting priorities, and particular greetings to my compatriots from Nigeria who are here for the awards. You'll be glad to know I don't have a presentation, so I'm just going to focus on some key strategy points. And indeed, we welcome this mission from the UN and the colleagues who are here from EC and from UNECA who are here to present. And I think a lot of colleagues have talked about a lot of the issues. So I'm going to really just try to pare down and focus in on the things that I think will be important for all African countries as we engage in this. First of all, the target. Let me say, I think the target is eminently achievable if we take a year-on-year phased approach to it. And I particularly like the points around multimodalities, infrastructure, the vehicle safety and response capability. So I think the real debate for a lot of African countries here has to be about the balance. The balance on the context and the needs and desires to have this vis-a-vis where different countries are on their journeys. Ghana already has a robust plan for self-reliance and a Ghana beyond aid, and therefore is in a very strong position to actually provide a lot of leadership in this area. We're particularly keen to make the connection between climate resilience, green transformation, and this particular topic, because often it gets bogged down in technical things. But the reality is that green transformations are taking place before our very eyes, and digital transformations are taking place before our very eyes. And as a result of that, unless we really grab this, we will be behind. But if we do, there's an opportunity to really leapfrog for Africa on green, clean energy. So Africa must not be left behind. Trade and the opportunities of trade means that it's really powerful opportunity for growing African economies, particularly the likes of Ghana, to participate actively in this area and in the discussions and negotiations to ensure that the right capacities are in place for Ghana and for developing countries to be able to be in a position to compete. Because unless they're in a position to compete, we will always be at the receiving end of this. We also know that the climate conversations are a critical place to be discussing adaptation, to be discussing some of the new technologies that will help us to leapfrog beyond
this carbon heavy environment that we're in. And to draw attention to the upcoming COP27. It will be the first COP in Africa to be held in Egypt. And it's a true opportunity to discuss the implementation of those climate initiatives and to bring them home around the issue of road safety and vehicle use in Ghana. So what do we really need to do? Policies and regulations, and have a real conversation about those policies and regulations, and ensuring that the space for Africa to participate is there. On financing, we know that there's a huge challenge around financing the SDGs. The infrastructure required is heavy. How do we do that and engage with the government programs that exist, in Ghana's case, CARES or Batampa, and part of the economic recovery, which is already going successfully. Ghana also has a robust digital strategy and is really connecting these. How do we engage in using those effectively? And through MESTI, how do we really invest in innovation to ensure that Ghana and African countries are able to play their part? Clearly, there's a big role for partnerships. This is not something any country can go it alone. And we really encourage the kinds of global partnerships that will be required at both receiving ends for exports and production ends here for new technologies to engage in those conversations, share R&D, share technology. If we take the lessons from COVID and the president here saying Ghana must produce its own vaccines and Africa must produce its own vaccines, what does that mean for the road safety crisis, and how can this space be inspired to act on that? And finally, mindsets. We must shift away from a mindset that unless you have a four-wheel drive, life is bad. And to begin to adopt the multiple modalities of transport that are required. They're actually indigenous and cultural to all of us, and begin to really embrace those, but sell those in a way that really works. So I think Ghana is the right place for this event. There are big policy debates that need to be had, key investment priorities and choices to be made. And we really hope that this conversation, beyond the immediate issues of road safety, inspires a global connected conversation that sees Ghana taking its rightful place. Let me leave it here and leave the technicalities out. Thank you very much.
Give him a big round of applause. He's done it less than a minute he was supposed to. Thank you so much, Charles, for your presentation. So it's time for some general discussion. I would invite the panelists who are here physically to join me here on stage, whilst those who are virtual will also be available, so that we give opportunity to participants. Right now, we have about 87 participants virtual, and then those of us who are here. So please join me, the three of you, so that if there are any questions, yes, please. Placide, where are you? Okay, so my panelists are here, and this is the opportunity for us to ask them questions on the presentations that they made earlier. We have Placide here, who talked about the African Post 2021 Strategic Direction for Road Safety. Robert talked about the African Road Safety Action Plan, a focus on safety vehicles. We have also Mr. Tran, who joined us virtually, who talked about UN Global Roads Action Plan for decade 2021 to 2030. And then we have Walter Nisler, who also talked about the UN vehicle regulation. Last but not the least was Charles, who also told us about the Ghana's national determined contribution. So the floor is open for questions to any of them, please. To any of them. Okay, so please, can you check the chat for us? If there are any questions. There are no questions there. Yes, there's one. Who has the mic? Oh, you are there. You want to, we'll come to you. Please, your question. We would like to know who you are, please. Okay, we'll take another question. We have only 10 minutes, so we have one more. Please, if it's related to any of your, you can pick it after that. Yeah.
The first action plan for road safety was to reduce fatality by 50%. That was from 2010 to 2020. How did we perform? And coming up with the same 50% reduction in crashes. I said no. If I will put it, not opening what we do from what I know, we're not able to achieve that. Objective for reducing fatality.
So I think we'll have just one more. Yeah, please. Jesse, you should be looking at me.
My question is, as we call for the harmonization and standardization, are we also considering as well bringing up our professional drivers and their capacity, harmonizing and standardizing that training and that quality? We have ourselves recognized that safer drivers are more efficient drivers. They produce less emissions. They cause less wear and tear to their vehicles, and they cause less wear and tear to the infrastructure. Are we at a risk of missing the great advances with the proposal of harmonizing and standardizing the vehicle imports if we don't at the same time bring up our operators, our drivers in tandem? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, somebody's hand up. Very brief, and then we'll give them 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Kofi Annan from Ghana Shepherds Authority. I have just two questions. I think my brother here has said one, and as a road user, Her Excellency also mentioned one. But my question here is this. We've spoken about the imports of used vehicles into our system. And I believe that in Africa, most of this reasons has been as a result of funding new vehicles into our system. However, like Her Excellency said, we have the situation where we can employ the use of public transport system. Unfortunately, we don't have it this way. But if you talk about road safety, I look at it in different dimensions. Our road itself, the capacity of the drivers that are driving before the health of the vehicle in particular. What is the collaboration between our highways authorities, the urban roads, and then road safety, and then our vehicle and licensing authorities in building capacities, educating the people in public? Because as road users, we all know what happens. Just a little patience, and we may be using very old cars, but we'll have our lives. This is what I want panelists to talk about to respond for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll give panelists
It's as much about regulation as it is about incentives. How do we have public transport systems? How do we invest in rail? And Ghana is investing heavily in rail through its Cares with Batampa program and the UN SDG investment fairs. And how do we build those partnerships? But of course, this requires significant finance, and we talked about infrastructure that is required. And I think, therefore, making decisions about the catalytic priorities for any country that enable it to hit a number of points: green, safety, economic development, jobs. All of this needs to be taken into account as we now begin to prioritize as we get into the wind down to the 2030 agenda. And finally, a word about, I think, the questions raised more recently at the last two. Innovation is key. One of the groups that the UN supports here in Ghana is the Ghana Road Safety Foundation, who have developed an app that can be used by drivers to do repeated training. It has incentives built into it. It's in collaboration with the Ghana Road Safety Commission in a way that then incentivizes training, repeated training, capacity among local citizens to really engage effectively. And I think it's these kinds of innovations, homegrown here in Africa, that can really help drivers to become better and the right investments to be made so that we achieve this target. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will try to touch on a few of the questions. The first from the High Commissioner of Namibia, I think really we're talking here about the nexus between used vehicles and public transportation. I think this is a dilemma for many transport planners because of the concern that newer vehicles would be more expensive and we may not be able to afford those in Africa, and that may have a negative impact on mobility. That may be true to an extent, but I think there's some research that have shown that countries that have imposed restrictions on the importation of all vehicles have not really experienced a shortage in growth of vehicle population. People have shifted maybe from buying more expensive vehicles to newer ones. But I think the point is well taken. It's a concern, and there's some research that is going to see the impact of this. I think let me just touch on the issue of target. Are we achieving the 50%? Certainly no. ECA has done reviews in 4 countries so far, and we found out that in all of these countries, Ethiopia, Uganda, Zimbabwe, Cameroon, we've actually seen an increase in debt over the decade rather than achieving the 50%. But I think we know the problems, we know the solutions. That's why we are optimistic that we may not achieve 50%, but we could achieve a lot more. And let me just end with the last question is about the many ways the relationship between highways and road safeties, and how can that happen? I'm just end by saying that two ways: vehicle inspections, road inspections, road audits. These are different measures that highway authorities could use to ensure the safety of their roads. Of course, we do have safety ratings of roads nowadays, which attaches some ratings from 0 to 5 to a lot of time, and I will not go into that. And I see Daniel shaking his head.
Thank you. Let me just complement what has been said about the target of 50%. Yes, UNECA and African Union conducted 2 assessments on the African Road Safety Action Plan for the decade 2011-2020 in 2015 and 2019, and we are far from that target. One of the lessons we could have from that is also the issue of data and the monitoring and the evaluation of the action plan, and those aspects did not follow, and I hope we will do better for this new decade as well. Thank you.
So I would give the opportunity to our other 2 panelists, if they have anything to answer, just a minute each, so that we are hard pressed with time. Please, can you assist me, the Secretariat? Let's see whether any of them have anything to respond to. None of them.
So,
yeah, please, you can respond now.
thank you. I don't have a whole lot to add. I think I just wanted to echo the point that obviously the vehicle safety issue is extremely important, but I think from our perspective, we really are actually pushing for mobility and transport to be considered in a broader context of sustainable development. And from that perspective, I think we very much echo the perspectives of the resident coordinator in terms of thinking about mobility and sustainable mobility and investments in public transport and in other safer modalities of transport, which are also cleaner, but actually healthier for the population as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know whether Jane also has. Okay, so now we can continue. I think, like I said, the other sections will address some of the questions. Public transport, the type of public transport we have in Africa, etc., funding and the like. So we'll give the opportunity. I'll use this opportunity to thank all the presenters for the wonderful presentation you did. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go to the next section. The DJ. We are going to the next session. The next session has opportunities and options for safer and cleaner vehicles in Africa. And we have the panel section 1, where we will show a short video of about 5 minutes. Then Jane Akumu will come in to give the international overview. And then we have Marietta Hajono, who also will give the exporter perspective. They all will do this virtually. So they'll join us virtually. So can we have the short video? Thank you.
More than 90% of road crashes take place in developing countries, with Africa having the highest road traffic fatalities at an alarming 246,000 deaths each year. The African vehicle fleet is set to grow 5 times by 2050, and the road safety impacts are likely to rise exponentially. Globally, the light-duty vehicle fleet is set to double by 2050, and some 90% of this growth will take place in non-OECD countries, which import mainly used vehicles. In recent years, the international trade of used vehicles has increasingly raised concerns. Without any regional or global harmonized regulations to control the quality of these vehicles, the trade leads to increased pollutant and climate emissions, high energy consumption and operating costs, and weakened road safety for importing countries. Between 2015 and 2018, the 3 leading exporters of used vehicles were Europe, Japan, and the US. But other countries like China and South Korea are growing in importance. In total, 70% of used vehicles exported were destined for developing countries, with Africa as the largest importing region, receiving 40% of the worldwide trade. Published in 2020, the UN Environment Programme report, Used Vehicles and the Environment, looks at the flow, scale and regulations of used light-duty vehicles. The report unveils that most exporting and importing countries have limited or no regulations governing the quality and safety of exported used vehicles. Out of the 146 countries analysed and ranked in the report, about 2/3 have weak or very weak policies to regulate the import of used vehicles. About 1/3 have good or very good policies. In Africa alone, 45 out of 54 countries have weak to very weak regulations in place. To address this issue, the Safer and Cleaner Used Vehicles project was launched in June 2020. It is led by the UN Environment Programme and the UN Economic Commission for Europe, and implemented with the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, the International Motor Vehicles Inspection Committee, the African Union Commission, and the UN Economic Commission for Africa. Funded by the UN Road Safety Fund, the project seeks to shift the paradigm on the used vehicles trade by facilitating the establishment of harmonized minimum requirements, policies, and standards to regulate the export and import of used vehicles, focusing initially on Africa. The aim is to ensure that Africa will receive only quality used vehicles, which will have major road safety benefits, as well as co-benefits for the environment, air quality, economy, and energy consumption. For more information, scan the QR code.
That was a wonderful video. And so Ms. Jane Akumu, who's the Africa Focal at the UN Environment on Promoting Cleaner Mobility Programs, UNEP, will give the international overview on why safer and cleaner used vehicles. So Jane, can we have you? Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'll just dive straight to my presentation because of the time. I know we have a short period. Just maybe stay there for a few minutes. I'll focus on 2-3 slides, maybe a minute each. So after the 2020 report that was released on the light-duty vehicles, used light-duty vehicles, we did an update, which was released last year during the COP. And the report added 2 more years of data, that is 2019 and 2020. And and of course also added 1 extra exporter, which is South Korea, in addition to the EU, Japan, and the US. And what we found is that 23 million vehicles were actually exported. And again, the bulk of these vehicles were actually exported to Africa. In addition to this report, maybe just to say that through some other programs that we are coordinating, we've worked or collaborated with about 30 African countries to look at what kind of vehicles are imported, age-wise, in terms of quality, the fuel economy, and technology, and a bit of this, you already had from the morning, And this is just one example from Kenya. You can see, the really high growth rate in the number of vehicles in a few decades. And one of the things that I would really want to point out here is the blue bar. The high increase is actually in 2- and 3-wheelers, mainly 2-wheelers. So that's something that I'll talk about maybe in my conclusion. Next slide, please. During the opening, the Honorable Minister spoke about the need for looking at fuels and vehicles as a system, because the ultimate objective is, to reduce emissions, to save lives. So we need to look at both of these issues together. He spoke about the need for clean fuels to be able to operate clean vehicle technologies. And you can see there's been very good progress in Africa. Maybe we're still not there, but Africa had very, very high sulfur fuels, for example. There's been quite some significant progress, as he mentioned, within East Africa and a bit in the Southern Africa. But where the challenge is, this is the situation today, where the challenge is when we talk about the vehicle emission standards. Only 2 countries in Africa have a Euro 4 equivalent standard. That's Morocco and Rwanda, that is actually implemented today in Africa. Next slide, please. So why is this important? Why is the issue of vehicles and used vehicles and new? Yes, why is it important? We saw this, that Africa predominantly relies on used vehicles. And this is an example of Tanzania and Gambia. Next slide, please. About 97% of vehicles in Tanzania actually used vehicles. Next slide. Age, a big problem again, from Uganda, Mali. We also had from Robert about age. Most of the vehicle fleet actually in Africa, because we are importing predominantly very old vehicles. So the vehicle fleet is about 20 years. Next slide. So there has been good progress. I think this is where I wanted to focus maybe a minute. There has been good progress in Africa. If Africa can implement what is already agreed on, the ECOWAS, 15 countries in ECOWAS in 2020, September, adapted, the Council of Ministers adapted regional-wide harmonized standards on fuel and on vehicles. Very good standards which limit the age, which look at the vehicle emission standards, which look at the issue of compliance and enforcement. So if this is actually implemented, I think already we'll have the 15 countries at a good position. So, and this, I would say, would be the basis where, the Honorable, the Madam Vera, spoke about need for minimum standards. So the ECOWAS could form the minimum standards that could be presented in Africa. Maybe the conclusion, if we go to the conclusion, the last slide, I would say there are opportunities for Africa when it comes to used vehicles, especially electric mobility. I would say, the world is now moving to electric mobility, and I think Africa stands at a good chance to move to green, to move to cleaner energy, looking at electric mobility as an opportunity.
Time is up.
Thank you.
We are pressed with time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think the information is clear, how we are going as Africa and the shortcomings that we have also internationally. So thank you very much, Jane. Now we have Marietta also giving us, Marietta Hajono, who is giving us the exporter perspective. So please, Marietta, can you come on,
yes.
please?
Yes, can you hear me?
5 minutes, 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, I have 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Hello, Ghana. Hello, everyone online. I will be very quick as I have 5 minutes, I understand. I'm very happy to be able to say a few words today because I'm very passionate to work on this topic because I believe this topic has huge impacts, but also huge opportunities for health, road safety, and climate. That's been mentioned by a lot of the people before me, so I won't go into this. I'm presenting one of the exporter perspectives. We, as Dutch Inspectorate, part of the ministry, we did 3 studies on fuels, on vehicles, and on the relation between the two. The reason, as Jane already mentioned, vehicles and fuels are one system. We need to look at it together. Also, the reason why we wanted to know the quality of fuels exported from the Netherlands to West Africa, as well vehicles, used vehicles exported to West Africa, is that we see that there are a lot of developments, for example, in the ECOWAS region, but also there's an opportunity because also the European Commission is revising relevant pieces of legislation. So what we did was a study to see what the quality of the exports of the used vehicles actually are. We did a field study and a desk study, and very basically we concluded that the majority of used vehicles is very old, between 16 and 20 years old. They have a low emission level, mostly Euro 2, Euro 3, and they no longer have a valid roadworthiness certificate. So these were like very serious conclusions, and we also compared them to the vehicles ending up at the scrap yards in the Netherlands, and we see a lot of similarities. We did some inspection and we saw that a group of used vehicles was in reasonable state, but that around 50% of the vehicles actually would fail a periodic roadworthiness test. And just as an example, 1 out of 8 airbags had a malfunction. We also saw very high mileages. For example, those 2 trucks, I think they were destined for Benghazi and for Lagos. They were almost over 800,000 kilometers on the odometer already. And then they would only start their lives in those countries. When we tested the emissions, we saw that 4 of the 5 catalytic converters actually functioned, which is good news, but it also means that these catalytic converters need low sulfur fuels. And it was mentioned by the Honorable Deputy Minister of Ghana that Ghana indeed proceeded and have good standards on fuel quality, which is important because for the catalytic converters to work and reduce emissions. We also saw that 1 out of 5 catalytic converters did not work as they had been removed, for example. These are some examples.
1 minute for you, Maria.
Yeah. Yes, I'll just go to the solutions then. I'll skip some of these pictures, some of the vehicles that we saw and that we stopped from export. I think the good thing is that our study also showed that regulation works because we saw the younger vehicles going to, for example, Ghana and Morocco, actually the countries that have the standards in place. So it does work. So if we look at the future and what needs to happen, we believe there are like several pieces of the puzzle, and we definitely need export countries to step up. And I think it's been said before, if it's not fit for the countries in Europe, it should not be fit for other countries. So we should not send this stuff. Import standards and harmonize it, very important. To keep the vehicles in a good condition when they come in a good condition, very important. My last slide, I'll do my last slide. I believe where we have to act is globally, because we cannot only have like zero emission transport in Europe, we also need to work on a global flow.
The message was, thank you so much.
Okay, okay, you're welcome, thank you.
You know why I have to look at the time, His Excellency the President will be coming, and this place would have to be rearranged. So please forgive me. We will have to continue. So we'll go with the second session. And this one has opportunities and options for Africa. We have a short video. Then Robert will come back to talk about the African region. And then Dan Essel, also from Ghana, will also talk about the country perspective. So please, can we have, thank you.
Between 2015 and 2018, around 14 million used vehicles were exported worldwide. 70% were intended for low and middle income countries, especially in Africa. However, no global harmonized regulation exists regarding the minimum importing and exporting requirements for trading used vehicles, or regarding how the compliance information should be shared between countries. To ensure that used vehicles traded are roadworthy and non-polluting is a mutual responsibility of the exporting and importing countries. The exporters should indicate how the vehicles to be exported were conceived, if they were modified or damaged, and should provide and share reliable data. the importers should define their importation standards and assess whether these vehicles meet the local requirements in terms of roadworthiness and environment. Vehicle information sharing systems do not currently exist. The information and data for inspection collected by all countries should be shared and made available. Accessible information would ensure that the used vehicles which do not meet the requirements of the exporting country are not exported to low and middle income countries. For instance, the report by the Netherlands Human Environment and Transport Inspectorate, entitled Used Vehicles Exported to Africa, highlights that most of the used vehicles exported through their ports to Africa do not have a valid roadworthiness certificate at the time of export and are aged 16 to 20 years. 80% are also below the Euro 4 vehicles emission standard. According to the International Motor Vehicle Inspection Committee, the Japan-New Zealand procedures for exporting and importing used vehicles are the most complete, including inspections in the country of export and at destination. Nowadays, several vehicle data sources are available on an international basis, but the coordination and access to the information are still under development, according to a CETA report from 2021. An example is the UNRSF platform, which provides information that is used to assess vehicle compliance for the requirements of the importing country, such as age or emissions. However, this platform is limited to Europe, making it very difficult for importing countries in other regions to verify the quality of used vehicles at the time of inspection on arrival. The same applies to used vehicles trading outside of Europe. For instance, the official vehicle data platform used in Japan is not adapted for foreign use, and information on used vehicles exported from the United States is mostly provided by non-governmental sources, that is, private data suppliers. Launched in June 2020, the project Safer and Cleaner Used Vehicles for Africa seeks to facilitate the establishment of harmonized minimum requirements, policies and standards to only provide quality used vehicles to low and middle income countries. This includes ensuring that vehicle inspection data circulates properly between importing and exporting countries. CETA, a partner of the project, is currently working on establishing a used vehicle information sharing system with data support. The purpose is to make vehicle-specific data electronically available to importing countries and to ensure that these sources of information are available for international use. To find out more about the Safer and Cleaner Used Vehicles for Africa project and CETA's report, scan the QR code.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So this was a very good video that we watched. We'll invite Robert upstage to give his view on the African region. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. I think I'm going to be very brief so that I don't eat into your time. I think let me just start about what I see as an opportunity before I could go into a little bit more detail. I see two opportunities in this regard because we're talking here about data on used vehicles. One, many African countries are in the process of digitalizing road safety data. And I see this as an opportunity because we're in a virgin kind of a situation. And since we are modernizing our data, this is an opportunity to link in this idea of the used vehicle database in developed world. I think number two is we are seeing digitalization that is growing on the continent. So more and more Africans are going into the digital space. So those are two of the opportunities that I see. But coming to data, I think data on road safety, not just vehicles, is a contentious issue in Africa. And you can see that in the WHO Global Status Report on Road Safety. What African countries are reporting as the rate of death on the continent is by far lower than WHO data. So data is a big contentious issue in Africa, and I see this, if we're not careful, to continue in terms of the platform for sharing information on used vehicles. I think ACS work has shown that many African countries are in the process of modernizing data on road safety. As we speak, a lot of countries still use manual methods, but I know Cameroon, Uganda that have been involved, even Ethiopia are in the process of digitalization. So they're trying to connect information on drivers, licensing, with information on vehicles. So I would say that this is an opportunity to link also information on used vehicle. So basically, Chair, those are the two opportunities that I see, and not to eat too much into your time. Thank you.
Thank you. That was snappy and direct to the point. Thank you so much, Robert. And so let us take notes. What the Africa region thinks. He has two areas we can look at. Now we'll invite Daniel Essel. He is with the Policy Planning and Research Department, Ministry of Transport, Government of Ghana, to give the country perspective. Dan. Okay. 5 minutes.
Thank you, moderator. Yes, so I have 5 minutes and I'll be very snappy. Yeah, so next slide. Yeah, so by way of statistics, as at 2019, well over, we had close to 100 million imported vehicles, and just 1 million, that's used vehicle, new vehicles, and just 1 million was for the African continent. It means that 90% of the vehicles that we have on this continent are used. And for Ghana, as I speak, we have about 2.8 million vehicles. In terms of the distribution, we have a bit lower, but it's 85% of the vehicles being imported are used. And this calls for very serious measures to control the trend. Now, looking at the statistics from 2010 to 2021, we just had just under 100,000 vehicles coming in per year. And as I speak, we have close to over 200,000 vehicles coming in annually. In terms of the existing regulations that is governing these imports of vehicles, we have the Custom Amendment Act, we have the overage imports penalty on vehicles, we have the mandatory inspection, which the DVLA superintend, and this is just a snapshot of the mandatory inspection. So far, we have collaborated. Mazia, sorry, I'm moving faster, but your slides are moving slower. Yeah, so the next slide. Sorry, next slide again. Next slide. Yes, so we have about 27 vehicle testing centers, and these are stations where we use equipment to test vehicles. Bear in mind, this will go in for vehicles that are in-house, in-country, but we need to see how we could also address those vehicles coming in from outside our borders. Next slide. So locally, when you check the map of Ghana, next slide. When you check the map of Ghana, you have testing centers dotted down south, but there's a need to improve capacity when you move to other parts of the country. So these are issues that we need to deal with. The next slide. Next slide. Yeah, so in terms of opportunities, yes, we have the vehicle import ban, which came into effect in 2020. We've also done well. Next slide, sorry. We've also done well in terms of sulfur reduction in our fuel. We used to have a limit of about 3,000 ppm. We moved to 500 ppm. Now we are doing 50 ppm for imported products. We also have a very strong oversight regulatory regime in terms of on the floor, adulteration and all that. And then in terms of the vehicle inspection, we also have the DVLA doing a lot of effort in terms of the automation of the inspection itself, and then the expansion of that program. We also have opportunity to leverage on newer technologies by way of electric vehicles. Currently, we are also into the manufacturing of vehicles, and we have some startups that have already begun. We have VW, Toyota, and the local assembler, Kantanka, all in operations. Next slide. So by way of fiscal policies that is governing this arrangement, in terms of the automotive policy, we have some very nice regulation in terms of duty imposition. So if you bring in a vehicle, there are some duties that we could slap on them. But if they come in form of semi-knockdown and knockdown parts, there are policies to support local manufacturing. So this support. In terms of the opportunities, we have just recently passed the homologation exercise. We also have a vehicle emission standards. We have the mandatory inspection, and then we have just recently developed standards for used vehicles. This is being discussed. Now, in conclusion, and just to rush you through, locally, we can put in the necessary frameworks to check the vehicles that come in, but it's better from the export point of view. From the export point of view, countries that export vehicles to us work on making sure that the vehicles that come to us are fit for purpose, meet our emission standards, meet our requirements in terms of safety and the rest. So, Madam Moderator, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. You know, I gave Dan 1 extra minute. In Ghana, we say something like Kokofu Bobo. So I had to give him 1 minute. So Dan, thank you very much. Now, we're supposed by our agenda, we're supposed to close at 1 p.m. That's 13 hours. It's past almost 1:30. 1:30, yes. So please, we say in our local language, I attended a function or a program and I didn't speak, then it's better you never went for that program. So I'll give just 2 people to comment on the 2 presentations, just 2. Whether it's a comment or a question for any of the, just 2, please. If none, then I would be pleased because time is really against us. Any 2? Yes. We have Oche.
Okay, thank you. I want to take the opportunity to thank our presenters for traveling over to share with us your ideas. I just have a quick comment. I think the focus has been on used vehicles, right? And in Africa, we have a lot of them, and we're not manufacturing vehicles. Now, I want to give an analogy right now. In Africa, there is something else that we also use quite extensively, and that's used clothing, right? But when you see people buy used clothing, they find a way to maintain it. Because I've never seen anybody walking down the street with his clothes torn up or anything like that. Why? Because there will be a social cost to not maintaining your clothes, even as much as it's used. So why is it that when it comes to used vehicles, the standards say you should have both brake lights at the back, but you see some with none at all, and it'll pass right in front of a police officer, even though there's a rule against that. And so my thing is, look, there's a lot of amazing mechanics, auto mechanics in Africa. Whatever the problem is, they can fix it. The reason why people would rather pay attention to social things like if I go to a funeral, I have to contribute, even though that's not compulsory, but we have to. But when it comes to fixing our vehicles, we don't. The reason is that we're not enforcing the rules. And so in as much as we have used vehicles, use this and that, Africa will never get over the hump until we get serious about enforcing what it is that the rules are. Used vehicles can still be maintained to standards. And the only way the owners of those vehicles will maintain and keep them in standard is if we're serious about enforcing what the rules are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I understand there are so many questions online. Unfortunately, we cannot answer them. So I will propose that the organizers will try to get those questions to the various panelists so that they can try to answer them and send them back their answers, because we cannot come for a webinar session like this without getting answers to our questions. I want to use this opportunity to thank you all for your cooperation during the period that I was the moderator for this session. Thank you. So before I leave, I think the closing, so Robert will come over and give us the closing session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, moderator. I think I should say that we have achieved the objectives of this webinar. I think in many ways we were trying to warm up for the main event that will start in a couple of hours, which would be the award of the Kofi Annan Award to some countries that have demonstrated commitment to road safety. I think one of the objectives we had for this webinar was to raise awareness on the issue of used vehicle at a very high political level. We know the president is coming here today. We heard the executive secretary of ECA saying, how can we push this agenda into an AU agenda? So we believe that this platform, because this webinar is part of the Kofi Annan Award ceremony, is a good platform to showcase that used vehicle is a serious problem on the continent. I want also to thank all the contributors. We have put together a team of experts from basically across the world that are doing some leading work on used vehicles. UNECE, we heard from Walters, we heard from Jane in UNEP that are right in the forefront on discussions of used vehicles in the context of the environment. We heard from Nan from WHO that led the whole process of the global action plan for road safety, where used vehicle was a major component. So I want to thank all of these speakers. And I just want to say that as far as ECA is concerned, we're not going to leave the issue of used vehicle here in Accra at this meeting. We are going to continue to work on it. The tools are there. We heard about the need to harmonize data on used vehicles and basically to share it from sources like Europe, where they have platform, and the US, and to make sure that these platforms with information on used vehicles are shared with African countries. So I would just want to stop here and thank you all, and also to thank the interpreters for the excellent job that they have been doing, and also the Ministry of Transport in Ghana, who have been working tirelessly to make this meeting happen. We are not there yet, we are almost there. So I will count on all of you to come back in the afternoon, so that we are together when we congratulate those countries that would receive the award. So with that, moderator, I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert and the team. I think the chairperson, the moderator, requires, and we must give her a round of applause. She's done a very good job steering affairs to this end. And I must confess that it's been a very fruitful discussion. A lot of information has been shared. And so it's up to us, Africa, to see how we can make use of this, expect advice from our friends across the world to make some meaningful outcomes from it. We thank you for your questions, inputs, and suggestions. At this stage, because of time, we are quickly going back out there. Some of you, we expect you to be back by 3 p.m. again for the award ceremony itself. Some, I am sure, may not come, but you hear from the media from tomorrow. So on this note, let me thank you once again, and I hope to see you again 3 p.m. where His Excellency the President is expected to be here and to give the awards to countries that have been selected from Africa for their excellence in road safety management. Thank you and wish you well.